Hello, welcome to Garland ISD and Successful Classroom Management Strategies. This presentation is brought to you by the Student Services Behavior Program Specialist. As you sit through this training session, please take notes and consider how you will implement this in your classroom after Labor Day. With the time lapse between face-to-face school, you will want something to refer to. Today, our session objectives will be to understand the difference between Stoic and Champs, and also to learn how to structure your classroom for success, how to teach classroom expectations, how to observe your students systematically, how to interact positively, and to correct your students calmly. The norms for today's sessions are: please be present, get comfortable, take notes and gain ideas to start the school year, and contact your support. Please keep in mind as we move through the presentation that it is for all age groups. You will need to take the examples and transfer the situation to other situations that have meaning to you. First, let's begin with two different words that you will need to know. The first is STOIC. It is an acronym for the variables that effective teachers utilize in classroom management. CHAMPS is a visual representation for teachers' expectations within the T of the STOIC framework. Why is structure necessary? The airport is always a place that has to have a lot of structure. It must have a structure where people feel safe, everyone must be aware of rules and expectations, and there is predictability. Safety and knowing what is expected and a level of predictability are the three things that students want from adults. We will begin with structuring your classroom for success. These should look familiar to everyone. Since March, our world has become more structured. These should look familiar to you by now. These signs and the directions have helped us add structure and to help us know the expectations. Thinking of structure you have seen lately, how would you design a classroom? Sure, you would want to use an appropriate desk arrangement, posters, books, manipulatives, and technology to provide visual structure to your classroom. But you also need to decide structure for entering and leaving the classroom. Where and how will students sharpen their pencil, throw away trash, and move about the room? Now more than ever, these things need to have a well thought out plan. Problem behavior is likely to occur when structure is not well thought out. The layout and design of your classroom is an important component. When a pandemic is not occurring, desk arrangement may be based on the subject or grade level you teach. Desks could be arranged based on activities and lessons that you have planned. You might change the desk arrangement after you begin to know your students. You will become aware of students who may need more structure, closer proximity to your teaching station, or several students who need to sit by different students. Desk arrangement should be based on the level of structure your students need. Notice the picture on the far right. Students are in small groups. All their supplies and materials are located close to their tables. This arrangement decreases the number of times and the distance students need to move. reducing the opportunities for misbehavior. The picture on the far left could be a layout used with older children or students who need less structure. Students have the ability to talk to more students instead of a small group of students. The arrangement also increases the opportunity to walk further while passing other students to turn in assignments, sharpen pencils, or throw away trash. The picture in the middle may look what it looks like when we return to the classroom for the 2020-2021 school year. This arrangement positions students facing the same direction and practices safety. What other ways could you add structure to the arrangements? It is important for your physical classroom to look appealing and structured. It promotes positive emotions, increases motivation, and enhances learning, which altogether improves behaviors. After physical structure is put in place, there are other pieces of structure that are needed. Let's go back to the airport scenario. Look at the similarities above that an airport and a classroom have in common. They both have the necessary pieces. One necessary piece is posted schedules. The second is verbal and visual expectations to keep people safe. Both entities are expected to manage large groups of people. Teachers, you need to always plan for an unexpected large class. The skill level of the participants are at different skill levels while moving through the process. For example, non-readers may need pictures instead of words. Someone who has never had the experience before may need directions repeated to them. You need to have a schedule plan for the first day of school. The schedule needs to fill the entire day. The schedule may change 1,000 times, but it's going to be important to refer students to a schedule and update them with changes. You are the keeper of your class schedule, so it may take you collaborating with other staff and writing it down someplace where you can refer to it. Use your phone, computer, or a timer to remind you of what is coming next. Consider not only the larger daily schedule you will need to learn, such as specials, recess, passing periods, staggered dismissal times, and lunch schedule. Then you will need your own daily class schedule and a schedule of activities within a lesson. Keep in mind that some students may have individual schedules based on their individual education plan. This lets students know what is expected for the lesson. Often we make the mistake that students will just know, but we all like to know what to expect. Have you ever been in a presentation and wondered when you're going to have lunch or what you're going to do next? Letting students know the schedule for the class or day will reduce anxiety and allow students to focus more and engage with your lesson. You know what? I didn't start at the beginning. What kind of tools can you use to help you keep up with your daily schedule? Write a few things down that you think might work for you. Your students will need and want to know what is expected both behaviorally and academically. They do not want rules to change based on adult moods. Students want and need consistency. Students need to know that the expectation and rules are for the class. Rules never vary. For example, you may have a rule that students speak to each other using kind words. That rule will never change. However, expectations may change based on the activity, lesson, or environment. For example, the expectations will look differently during direct instruction than working in groups. Expectations for each are different. Students need to be told verbally and have a visual each time they change. This increases the chance for compliance. These expectations need to be explicitly taught and posted at every grade level. Do you think Posting and teaching expectations does not guarantee that all people will follow them. However, they do increase the chances that the majority of the people will follow the expectations. Do you always drive 65 miles per hour? Do we always hope food service employees wash their hands? Have you ever walked up to a store without your mask and needed to turn around? Are there times when you do not follow every expectation and bend the rules? Good people will push the limits. Posting and explicitly teaching expectations increases the chance for compliance. Remember at the beginning of this presentation, we posted and discussed norms or expectations for today. Although you are all adults, it is still important that you know what to expect and what we expect of you. This is an example of how to simply change the wording, but keeping the same expectations for younger students. Pictures and symbols could be added to the expectation to help understanding. For just a moment, we're going to refer to the CHAMPS acronym. Remember from earlier in the presentation, CHAMPS is embedded into the STOIC acronym. It is part of the TEACH in STOIC. CHAMPS is a guide that helps teachers teach and students to remember behavioral expectations in the classroom. The C is for conversation. What level of conversation is needed for the activity? Are the students able to talk quietly, talk with others, or need to remain silent? H is for help. How will students get help and who can they ask? You, another student, or a reference? A is for activity. What is the activity during this lesson? Will it be teacher directed, group work, independent work, or something else? M is for movement. How are students allowed to move? Do they need to remain in their seat during the activity? Can they move only to sharpen their pencil? Are they allowed to move around the room as long as they are on task? And P is for participation. What does participation for the activity look like? Is it taking notes? Is it answering questions? Is it working cooperatively with others? The S is for success. When a student demonstrates all of the components, they will have been successful. This is an example of one teacher's CHAMPS expectations for all her expected activities in her class. We are going to look at the yellow column. The teacher is going to address the expectations for when she provides teacher-directed instruction. Can students have a conversation? No. When students need help, they will need to raise their hand and wait. The activity is for students to pay attention to the teacher. What movement is allowed? There is not any movement allowed. What participation is needed? Taking notes, answering questions, and following along. What were y'all so excited about? This is an example of CHAMPS expectations for At Your Seat. You will notice the teacher used pictures to help her students understand what is expected. This slide shows two more examples on how to post and use a visual to discuss expectations. We will talk more about teaching expectations because you have to do more than say them one time or just simply post them. Just keep in mind, it's going to be a 5 days a week thing. Once we have physical structure and expectations, we need to think of procedure and routines. Procedures are what we want the students to do. This then becomes a routine because the students learn to do it automatically. For example, every day when your students enter your classroom, you may have prepared a question for them to determine how everyone is feeling that day. It may be something like, draw an emoji to let me know how you are feeling today. Another day, it might be, in 5 words or less, let me know what you are looking forward to today. Even though the question changes, the students know the procedure is to answer the question because you have spent the first several days of school teaching, practicing, and discussing this procedure until it becomes a routine. We also know that it could be day 25 or 53, and you may have to review the procedure once again, especially after a holiday. Think of it this way. All of us as adults have walked out of a building and forgot where we parked the car. It happens. Kids have busy, stressful lives, and it happens to them as well. These pictures are only some of many procedures you will need to think about, teach, and practice with your students so that it becomes part of your classroom routine. Look at the picture in the top left corner. The teacher uses the tape and numbers on the floor to help organize how her students line up. Now look at the picture on the far top right. A small labeled can is set on each table. This reduces the number of times students leave their seats to throw away their trash. One student from each table is assigned to empty the trash can at the end of each day. Think through your classroom procedures and spend a lot of time teaching and practicing. Do not leave these kind of things to chance. Definitely think about what you want your students to know and plan ahead. This will save you time and energy later. Now we are going to talk about teaching expectations. A picture of a front loader is used in the slide as a visual because front loading is exactly what needs to be done so that you can get the behavior and academics that you want from your students. This means if you do a lot of work at the beginning, then it doesn't take that much work later. It becomes more routine. It will take you teaching directly, practicing so they become fluent, just like when students are learning math facts or learning to read. Benefits of front loading are it keeps things predictable, it reduces referrals, it improves social and emotional health, it increases academic instruction time, and it increases learning time. You saw this slide earlier. Now we will need to teach it. How do we do that, plus everything else we need to teach? Keep in mind, if you front load, meaning spend time in the beginning teaching the expectations, then you will get to spend more time teaching academics later. Let's look at the how. Direct instruction will be a must when beginning to teach any expectations or procedures. Show students what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. Ask students to describe what it looks like and what it does not, and always practice it. It does not matter if you teach pre-K or seniors, they all need to practice. First, show students what it is, then have them do it with you, then have them show what it looks like. Let's go back to the airline analogy. How does a flight attendant teach you to buckle your seatbelt? The flight attendants demonstrate and model. Even if you fly 25 or over 100 times, you will hear the same set of directions, and they model it at the same time. If you answered with the answers above, they are all correct. Let's take a moment to look at each of these a little closer. This is an example of the teacher modeling what listening may look like. She could also ask students to model. Other possibilities for modeling activity may include finding pictures, taking pictures, drawing pictures, or having a guest speaker model. Students practicing is an important component of teaching expectations. The teacher is going to give directions on how she wants students to raise their hand. Then a practice session will follow. During the practice session, the teacher assists students in need of help. The teacher will determine if the practice was successful, enough to move on, or if the students need a reteach and another practice session. Practicing can be done quickly and can become part of a pre-teaching session. These are several other ideas you can use to create an activity to teach your expectations. Take note of several that you will use. What rules and expectations are you considering for your class? Earlier in this presentation, we addressed the acronym CHAMPS as a visual. CHAMPS is an effective and easy way to remind us of all the behavior components to teach in your classroom. To start off, think of 3 to 5 different activities: direct instruction, group work, independent work, or something else. Make a CHAMPS expectation visual for each. Then teach them to your students. Choose one of the discussed strategies to teach these expectations. As the year continues, you may find that you need to teach more CHAMPS expectations for other activities you have not thought of. You can always add more throughout the year, but 3 to 5 will give you a good start. Once your students arrive to class, you will want to directly teach those expectations. Next, we will discuss observing systematically. Let's go back to the airline analogy again. Do flight attendants just assume you buckle up? No, they observe systematically. They walk down the aisle purposely, looking at each person for compliance. Multitasking is imperative when teaching. You must constantly teach and scan students for understanding and compliance. What are we looking for when observing and monitoring? We are looking for who is meeting or who is not meeting the expectations. Why are some experiencing success and others are struggling? Are your students understanding? Throughout the day, you'll need to constantly be observing student behavior and academic growth. You should be asking yourself, what am I observing? A change in behavior? A lack of understanding or interest? If a student's being successful or unsuccessful, does someone need more support? Based on my observations, I need to ask myself, what adjustments do I need to make? What predictions can I make based on what I know about my students? Are there changes in the environment that I can adjust to help my students be successful? Now we will move to the next variable in STOIC, interacting positively. Interactions that promote a successful classroom include positive feedback, non-contingent positive interaction, contingent interaction, and providing opportunities to respond. Keep in mind, feedback is what is said. Positive interaction is the timing of what is said and paying attention to students showing the correct behavior. Ask yourself, do you interact more frequently with students that are engaged in positive behavior than when students are engaged in negative behavior? Think about that. Do you find yourself addressing students more when they are on task and behaving, or do you address them more when they are off task and misbehaving? We hope your answer is when they are behaving. Interacting when students are meeting expectations is the cheapest and easiest way to get the desired behavior you want from your students. Are you interacting with them when they are engaged in positive behavior? Let's go back to the airline analogy. The flight attendants demonstrate and model, but let's think about their feedback. It is specific and descriptive. It's immediate and contingent on passengers doing what is expected, and it makes the passengers feel good. Giving feedback to students for what they are doing right will help them feel good too. Let's take this classroom example. Taylor is in class listening. She is nodding her head and looking at the teacher and answering questions. The teacher then says, Taylor, I like the way you're listening by looking at me and nodding your head and answering questions. The feedback describes what the teacher observed. It was immediately given when the teacher observed the behavior and delivered while Taylor was still meeting the expectation. How do you think Taylor felt? How do you think it impacts other students in the class? The interaction with Taylor was a positive interaction. If the child is demonstrating the correct behavior, it is a positive interaction. But what if Taylor is not listening? And the teacher says, Taylor, I noticed you are wearing a new hat. Although the teacher says something positive and nice to Taylor, it is a negative interaction because what Taylor was doing. Taylor was not paying attention. Therefore, the interaction was negative. Even if you are saying something nice but the child is not doing the correct behavior, it is not considered a positive interaction. Another way of providing positive feedback is using group contingency ideas. One of them being, use the praise around strategy to get students on track. You praise the students that are showing expected behavior all around your classroom. to encourage the student that is not behaviorally on track. Another is a group contingency game in which students earn points. This will use positive peer pressure to encourage students to meet behavioral expectations. Praise is powerful. This shows the positive to negative interactions needed for changing behavior. That is, for every one negative interaction, it is recommended 5 positive interactions are needed in order for a student to change or improve their behavior. Students that have experienced trauma need significantly more positive interaction. We need to expect that all of our students have experienced trauma just based on recent events. Because focusing on the negative is just what our brains tend to do, we need help to focus on the positives. Sometimes we feel we do not need to tell a student, "Thank you for walking," because they are not running down the hall. We often do not say anything because we feel they already know that running is not allowed. However, we are very quick to point out to a student that is running down the hall and correct them with "no running." Giving yourself reminders and posting tips keeps this in the forefront of your mind. Take a few minutes to look at these tips and think about what else you can do to accentuate the positive behavior with your students. Opportunities to respond is an easy and cheap way to keep students behaviorally on track and academically engaged. On your handout, there is a great video link we highly encourage you to watch. Anita Archer shows how to establish behavioral expectations while giving students multiple opportunities to respond to keep them engaged in the lesson. On this slide are 2 ideas to keep students engaged and respond to your lesson. Students give a thumbs up or thumbs down, or lay their hand flat to indicate they are not sure. The second idea shown is for students to hold up cards indicating the answers yes or no. Additional ideas are to have all the boys or all the girls give a choral answer. If you number your students, you can ask for the odd number students or even the even number students to give a choral answer. You can have your students respond without saying a word either. Have them stand up if they agree, or another physical motion. The important thing to remember is for students to have plenty of opportunities to engage with the lesson. Wow, you got it. Take a few minutes to look over these ideas when giving students opportunities to respond. Notice the goal is 4 to 6 times per minute. Although that may sound like a lot as you practice, you will find it really is not. Linked to your handout is a kindergarten teacher that gives her students plenty of opportunities. You will see in both that video and Anita Archer's, the students are so engaged with the lesson, they do not have time to be off task or misbehave. The last variable we will discuss is correcting students calmly. Correction is the least powerful variable we have in changing behavior. Focusing on the stoic variables of structure, teach, observe, and interact will help you be more proactive with student management and not need to rely as much on correction, which is reactive. Being determined to help students become behaviorally successful will take drive and grit to get you through the year. Connecting with students and building relationships is the most powerful, easy, and cheapest behavior management strategy you have. Students need to feel connected to their teacher and need to feel that you are there for them and will be fair. Using the phrase front loading implies to making connections over correction. Front load early with making the connections, and then when it is time to make the correction, you will be more successful. When correcting fluently, it will also be important for you to give the student time and space immediately following the correction. Any correction procedure you choose to do should be done consistently and given time to be effective. Typically, you need a couple of weeks with consistent interventions to determine its effectiveness. How would this flight attendant correct someone for not having their seatbelt buckled? This flight attendant would restate the directive privately and quietly and calmly. What if they refuse? Do something. Use a strategy. Use the strategy you are most likely to use with fidelity and consistency. Establish a bank of correction strategies you will use. As stated earlier, the strategy itself is not as important as using a strategy with consistency and fidelity. Take some time now to read the list. Come up with a few ideas that work for you. The acronym STOIC and CHAMPS are key variables to remember for effective classroom management, both virtually and once in the building. Student management is essential for your students' academic growth. Welcome to Garland ISD, and know that you have a large support group and support personnel to help you be successful in your classroom. We are excited to work with you as you make differences in students' lives here in Garland. Please feel free to reach out to your Garland ISD Behavior Program Specialist throughout the year should you need more support.